Flexibility. Flexibility. Now, it may seem like an odd concept to talk about when it comes to mindset and healing, but we need to have flexibility in order to have good energy. Flexibility is a manifestation of good energy. Over the past several Mindset Mondays, we've been talking about the 9 manifestations of good energy. So these are ways that you can cultivate and display that you have good energy in your life, and you can identify if someone else is good energy, i.e., if they're healthy for your soul. So think about the quality of flexibility. It is a manifestation of good energy. But what am I talking about exactly when I'm referring to flexibility? Well, unfortunately, I must admit that flexibility is not a perfect translation of the idea that I want to convey. So in this talk, I will be discussing flexibility using a variety of English words. You see, the closest idea that we might have is the Greek word that means gentleness, or is translated as mildness. So flexibility is a softness in approach, a mildness that tempers or pulls back harshness. It is a lack of rigidity, but it is not passivity. It is soft, but it is not weak. So this concept that we're talking about, this flexibility, is a gentleness. A gentleness. Now, when we think flexibility, you may think go with the flow. And going with the flow can sometimes be okay, I suppose. But we don't want to go with the flow so much that we become like a person who is floating on an inner tube, and the flow of the river or the tide is just carrying them off, so that they eventually end up somewhere without knowing where they are or where they're going. They have no control in their life. Some people live life this way, so passive, so go with the flow, that they just end up drifting along, and soon they won't be happy with where they end up. We don't want to be that go with the flow, but we need to have a bit of flexibility. And that's why we must bring in this concept of gentleness. Now, when I think of gentleness, one of the first things that comes to my mind is laundry detergent or toilet paper. And that's probably because I watched too much television as a child. It's used in advertising for these products to indicate that they're not harsh. Think about yourself for a moment. Are you someone that would be described as gentle, or are you someone that would be described as harsh? Many survivors of trauma learn that they need to be mean or gruff on the outside. They need to come off as more harsh to protect themselves. They may have developed a belief that gentleness is weakness, and it will cause you to get walked on and used and abused. But I want you to take a minute and open your mind to understand that gentleness cannot be weak. It is impossible. You see, when you take your dog to the dog park, and if you have a big, strong dog, and then it starts playing with a little puppy at the dog park, you might say to your big, strong dog, be gentle, gentle, gentle. Is gentleness weakness? No, because it's the big, strong dog that you're giving that command to. You wouldn't say that to the little puppy. You don't say, oh, little puppy, be gentle, because that little puppy does have actual weakness and is too weak to harm the bigger dog. So because the bigger dog has the power, it has the responsibility to be gentle. Those who are in positions of authority and power, parents, bosses, owners of companies, equipment, and land, they are the ones that need to be gentle. You need to be gentle because you have power. You have the power to hurt with your words. You have the power to harm with your hands and your fists. And so it is viewed as an attractive quality when someone who is strong, especially when men are described as gentle, this is viewed as an attractive quality, but it's something we all must cultivate. Gentleness. There's a Eastern proverb of a man who wanted to spread Eastern teachings to the West. But before he went, he wanted to go to the wife of his master, whom he had a good relationship with and would seek advice from, and get permission from her to go and spread these Eastern teachings in the West. Now, when he went to this mistress and asked, "Can I go and spread these teachings in the West?" The mistress said, "Hand me a knife," not even looking up from the meal she was preparing. And so the man took a knife, but when he handed it to her, he did it in a way that was gentle, pointing the blade toward himself and putting the handle in her hand carefully. She simply took the knife and set it aside and continued what she was doing and said, "You may go." Now the man said to her, "I must ask, why did you ask me to hand you the knife when you didn't use it, but you just set it aside?" And she said to him, "Because I wanted to see how you would deliver something." She was testing his gentleness, his ability to handle with care. Because if he were to go and deliver his message in a way that's harsh or overbearing, then the message would not be well received. So we want to think about our gentleness, our ability to communicate and interact in a way that tempers the power. Remember, it is not weakness. You can only be gentle if you are strong, if you are powerful. Flexibility is defined as a willingness to bend and change or compromise. Flexibility is the willingness to bend, change, or compromise. Do you think you want your leaders to be flexible? Imagine a father with his daughters, and his daughters are begging, "We want to go to the dance. Please let us go to the dance." And the father has a viewpoint that these school dances are just preparing young teenagers for the clubbing atmosphere and environment, and he doesn't want his daughters to have anything to do with it. But he could see it's important to them as they plead, "Please let us go to the dance. Everyone's going to be there." The father thinks about it, and he decides to compromise. And he says, "If you can keep your grades up, your mother and I will drop you off at the dance and pick you up. And I'm going to teach you first about this clubbing lifestyle because I don't want you getting too wrapped up into that. But if you'll do all of that, then yes, I'll let you go. I won't say no, even though it's not my preference for you to go." By him bending, compromising to allow his daughters to do something that is not to his preference, he is showing flexibility. He's showing good energy. Good energy is flexible because there's variety in the world. And as we encounter different personalities, different types of people, we cannot be rigid. We cannot expect everyone and everything to go and act according to our way of thinking and acting. We need to have the ability to be reasonable, yielding. Another translation for flexibility would be mildness. Now, of course, we think of that in terms of salsa. If your salsa is mild, then your salsa is not too spicy, right? But we don't want to associate mildness with being bland. That's going in the other extreme. It's not bland or lacking any flavor. We still want our salsa to have flavor, even if we order it to be medium or mild, right? And so likewise, we can still have our personality without being a person that says, I have a strong personality. Well, are you mild? Is that a mild thing to say, to think? Is that a mild disposition to have? It's our responsibility not to be passive or too aggressive, to be balanced. That's what mildness is about. Balance. Gentleness is defined in the dictionary as being kind, tender, mild. So again, we don't want to be rigid in our personality. A good way to think about this quality and how we can cultivate it in our lives is picture yourself right now holding a baby. You would support its head. You would have your hand shaped like a little cradle, right? And you might gently rock the baby to soothe it. But when that baby is in your hands, you're not thinking about your own needs. You're prioritizing the baby. When that baby is in your hands, if someone wanted to hurt it, they would have to come through you. You're protective. This is the way to approach relationships in general. This is gentleness. You see, in our relationships with others, we have to have the ability to prioritize them and their needs at least to the level of being equal to our own. We have to be protective of others, of their experience. That allows us to show mildness, to show flexibility, to be gentle. So how do you respond when provoked? For instance, if you're in traffic and everybody's just driving so slow, are you the type of person to respond with gentleness? How can we do that? Is this a gentle response? Everyone on this road is an idiot except for me. Is that a gentle response? Flexibility is that ability to bend and to be provoked in that moment and say, that's okay. So you can say, well, I will be late for my meeting, but at least I can listen to one of Roman's videos right now and get some edification in. Or at least I can listen to a TED Talk or my podcast right now. What am I doing? I'm compromising, I'm bending, I'm mitigating the stress of the situation. I'm accepting what I cannot control so that I can have a balanced, a mild, a gentle response. I'm showing flexibility. That's good energy. It's a manifestation of good energy. We want to think about the way that you approach life in general. It's because those who are flexible are intelligent. Instead of being on a raft or a inner tube and just floating wherever the waves take you, or going to the other extreme and paddling and paddling and paddling against the tide of the ocean where you're getting nowhere, an intelligent person, a mild person, analyzes a way that they can mitigate the circumstances, show flexibility for their environment, and still achieve their goals, their purpose, without working and exhausting themselves in the process. So if you're in a situation where you got the tide and it's moving against the direction you want to go, right? A skilled person would point their paddling going sideways against the tide, right? Because when you're going sideways instead of directly into the tide, you can continue to advance. The same principle is used more commonly for us because most of us probably don't spend time rowing against tide. But if you think about taking a hill on a bike, have you ever pedaled uphill? You see a rigid, stubborn person would just keep trying to take the hill with all of their strength, and they'll exhaust themselves. Perhaps they'll just give up at a certain point, realizing they're unable to take the hill on their own. Whereas a passive person will notice that the hill's too much work and just give up and let themselves roll backwards until they end up falling. But a flexible person will recognize that they can't take the hill straight on. And so they'll go up the hill diagonally, turning the side of their bike to the top of the hill and just taking the gradual incline up to one side, up to the other side, up to the other side, and working their way up the hill gradually. Yes, you can't get to your destination as fast, but you're not wasting your energy in the process. A wise, mild person avoids extremes. So likewise, we face problems, but if we do so with flexibility, with mildness, then we're facing our problems with intelligence, with wisdom, balance. That's the key that we strive for. Facing our problems with balance. Sometimes the answer is not just to all out fight against the tide and the current coming against you. Sometimes the answer is to look for a way to mitigate the circumstances. And although it may take time to get to your destination, patience, in the end, you will arrive alive. So think about some situations that you may face in your life. We have communication problems in the family, at work. How can you respond with mildness, flexibility? Can you show yourself willing to bend? Can you show yourself willing to take the blame instead of blaming others? Of course, we don't want to go to an extreme with this as survivors and just blame ourselves for everything, but it's just that willingness to say, maybe you're right. That's flexibility. Maybe I don't know everything. Maybe there is another way to do this. When someone's speaking to us and we don't like what it is they're saying, instead of aggressively arguing against them, we may be able to say, maybe I misunderstood you, but it seemed like you just told me that you want me to do all the work of the group. Is that correct? That's a mild response. It's measured. It's balanced. Imagine you come home and your kids are fighting again. And you've told them, stop fighting. I don't want you guys fighting. And they keep fighting with each other. How will you handle it? Well, a stubborn, rigid parent will blow up or yell or punish the kids. But what do they learn from that? Maybe just to hide the fact that they're fighting from you? A passive parent will say, oh, you guys figure it out for yourselves. Work it out amongst yourselves. And they do nothing. What do they learn from that? Nobody has their back. What is a balanced way, a gentle and mild way that you can address the issue that you're having? Well, you may take into account the way they're feeling. Maybe they have two sides of issues that need to be heard. So you may invite them to have a hearing and say, hey, you guys seem to be upset with each other. Why don't we sit down and work this out? I'll be the judge, and you can sit here, and each of you can get an opportunity to say your piece, and then we'll talk this out as a family. So let's have a whole family meeting about this. Again, even though we've done it before, even though I've told you before. Let's do it again. Because maybe I failed to teach you properly the first time how I want you to communicate. So maybe this time I'll try a different approach. That's good leadership. What about when setting boundaries? How can we be both mild, but still assert ourselves? Well, being mild, again, doesn't mean, being flexible doesn't mean we just are a doormat and we let everyone walk all over us. No, no, no. We must be healthy. We must be boundaried and assertive, but with gentleness. So we don't tell people our boundaries in a way that is harsh or mean. Oh, you idiot. I told you not to touch me. We may not need to speak in that manner. Many times, in fact, the majority of the time, it's better to assert yourself in a way that's gentle, that's kind, that's mild. We use softeners, such as complimenting the person first before letting them know what we feel they've done wrong, speaking in a soft tone, talking to them privately so as not to embarrass them in front of others, saying I'm sorry, acknowledging that they may not have known and we may not be right about everything. We can do all of that as a part of our boundary setting and our assertiveness. We can say, oh, I'm sorry, you might not have heard me the first time, but it's very important to me that you're not touching me while we're working. We can give a mild response. What's a gentle way that we can set boundaries? If a person wants to use our car, we can say, I can understand your need for transportation. I wish I could help everyone every time, but I have my limitations. So this time, it's a no. I'm sorry for that. We can put things in a gentle way. We can be mild when setting boundaries and limitations. Someone comes over and they want to borrow something from you. You can say, not this time. A neighbor or a person standing outside the store says, do you have money? Can you give me some money? Can you spare some change? You can say, I'm sorry. I can't help you out today. You see how we're still setting the boundary, right? We're still asserting the self. We're not caving into everything, but we're doing so in a way that's gentle. We're not harshly embarrassing people. We're not yelling at them. We're not trying to hurt them. When we're provoked or when someone has wronged us, that's the time to pull out the flexibility, the gentleness, the mildness. It's when you're provoked. It's when you feel upset or hurt. That shows that you are steeped in good energy. Can you do this? Of course you can. How? It takes practice. How do we practice? Start doing it in small things. Start being gentle, well-measured, mild, and balanced in small interactions in your life. And start to make it bigger. Let it become a habit. New neural pathways will form, and you'll create a new personality for yourself. A new personality, so that you will be described as a gentle person, so that people will say, she is mild. That's what you want. Power struggles come up in our life. They can occur in any relationship. Sometimes people try to control us. Sometimes they want to dominate us. It can lead to resentment if you let them get away with it, because inside you're boiling up and you just keep being too passive. It can lead to conflict if you try to address it head on. What is a mild way that we can handle power struggles? Well, we want to be balanced because sometimes it's superior to let a certain person have their way. Oh, it seems very important to you. Why don't we do it your way today? But sometimes we need to assert our boundary because they're asking too much. They want to give you the promotion, but they don't want to pay you for the work. Or they want to be seen as the most popular or the team leader. How can you handle people with their power struggles in a mild, gentle way? Well, really, a person that's flexible, that's gentle, doesn't fight for power, right? Because they already are powerful. They have inner power, personal power. So instead, they respond mildly. And if someone wants something that they can give, they will. But if it's something they cannot give, they will simply state, I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me. It just doesn't work for me. I can't do that. You're asking too much from me. When there's differences between you and another person, some will say they don't agree with your political beliefs. They don't agree with your religious beliefs. They don't agree with the way that you run your family. A mild person doesn't fight or argue or debate with these individuals. No. I will simply say, I appreciate your viewpoint. I think it's interesting to learn about how people think and feel. And if they say, well, are you going to change your mind to adopt my way of thinking? You may have to set a boundary there and say, no, I'm happy with my beliefs and my way of thinking. However, I appreciate you sharing with me today. Thank you so much. If they try to take up too much of your time, then you have to set a boundary, but you can be gentle. You can say, oh, excuse me. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I have to go. I don't have any more time to sit and listen to you. I'm so sorry. And then you leave. Is that mean? That's not mean. To be mean is to be harsh or cruel, to show no care or concern for another person or regard for them. Don't be afraid to interrupt people who are taking up your time. Just do so in a way that's gentle. You see how I did that? They're talking, and I just go, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt you." It's gentle. It's assertive. It's assertive, but it's balanced. I didn't say, "Shh, bzz, be quiet, shut up. I don't want to hear this." Right? See, when we don't assert ourselves, what happens? Now we run away from them the next time we see them because they take up too much of my time. I don't want to be bothered with them. Right? So if you don't want to live in fear and resentment, then you must take on your personal power and step up and be assertive. Of course, we can run into personality conflicts with persons. We have individuals at work that we don't like, that we don't want to work with. Does a gentle person express maybe to their supervisor that they don't want to work with a certain individual? Could be, because you have to protect your peace, right? You have to protect your energy, but they won't do so in a way that's passive, where they go and talk behind that person's back and tell everyone, I hate Sally. Do you like Sally? Oh, Sally is awful. Did she ever do this to you? Oh, no, 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 no. The gossiping, that's not gentleness. And they're not going to just sit there and take all the abuse because the resentment is going to well up. So what do? They speak up. They can either ask the person to change what it is about themselves that's so irritating, or they can ask their supervisor to reassign them. But either way, they're doing so in a way that's gentle, that's mild. So they might say something to their supervisor like, I love working here and I love my team. I am having a little bit of trouble with so-and-so, but other than that, it's perfect. I don't know if there's anything you can do about this, and I don't mean to be any trouble. You see all the softeners? It's gentle, it's mild in the approach, but still assertive. We're making space for ourselves when we create boundaries. It's like a borderline, an outline of the self. That's what boundaries are. They show where you exist. This is me right here. So when people are penetrating too much in your space, the boundary is the borderline where you say, hey, this is me. Except we're doing so in the energy realm. People don't know if they're crossing your boundaries unless you tell them. But when you do so, we seek to be balanced and to do so in a spirit of mildness. If we're a leader, a parent, a head of household, a boss at work, a babysitter, a leader in any way, then we need to be flexible. These are not negotiable qualities. These are the qualities that show you are the higher self. These are the qualities of being self-actualized. So let's be flexible. Let's be gentle. But remember, it's not weakness. It's impossible for a weak person to be gentle. You would look at a person who is weak, their softness is just an indication of their lack of strength. But when a person is truly strong, truly powerful, yet they're able to be so gentle in their touch, in the way they handle matters, that quality is soothing, it's attractive, and it makes them a good leader. And it's a manifestation of good energy. Thank you all for being here tonight. On Wednesday night, we're going to get together again, but for a group discussion. Be at all the meetings. Be at all the meetings. Don't miss them. Get them streaming in your car, in your little headphones, in your big headphones. Keep them streaming. We're doing it every week, twice a week, not just for fun. There's a reason, because it's changing the neural pathways of the brain. This is our edification. This is how we feed ourselves energetically. This is where we want to be. This is who we want to be. So come to the meetings until you are actualized, till you're totally healed. And you can reach out to myself or one of the coaches trained by me at mindfree.org. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great one.